All right, thanks for joining everyone so far.
Ellie, I saw the sign for the recording, so.
Yep, we are recording. Very nice. We're going to have such great content coming out of this. We can look back at it, and for anyone who's not here, so I'm happy we're able to record.
Right, we will get started in 2 minutes.
I have some fun plans. I just saw Kelly's chat. I'm actually going on vacation tomorrow to Grand Tetons and Yellowstone for 10 days. So it's not summer, but I'm counting it as summer because it's like
No,
here in New
jealous.
Hampshire.
Yeah,
I'm so excited.
that's
Not that
awesome.
I don't love talking about transmission lines, but this is like my last to-do check before vacation starts.
I am so excited for you. Have you been to the Tetons before?
No, nope.
It's gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Spoken from a person that lives out there. You've been to the Tetons? Yeah. Yeah, all the time. I was there yesterday. Yeah. No, I've never been either, but jealous of you. I'm going to rent a house just south of Myrtle Beach for the week of Memorial Day, take the two kids down to and on the beach and everything. So doing that in 2 weeks. So excited
That's
to that.
fun.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and someone just put in the chat. Yeah, it is close to Yellowstone. So we're actually splitting time. We're going like 5 days in Tetons and then going up to Yellowstone and coming back through.
Nice. Nobody else has any plans. That's okay. Still time. There's still time to make some. So
Everyone out working hard.
that's right.
I'm taking 6 weeks off on bonding leave because I have an 8-month-old who's keeping us up at night. So we need to find sleep during day, I guess. We are just
That's so
adapting.
exciting. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes.
Congratulations. Yeah, I cannot go on holiday this year because I'm expecting twins, so it's gonna be busy as well.
Wow.
Wow.
Congrats to you.
Yeah.
Congratulations to you too.
Anybody else expecting children? Now's the time to camera on. Jeez, that's awesome.
Not expecting children, but I do have a wedding in 2 weeks. So
Oh my
yeah.
Whoa!
Adding to the
Congrats.
life
Yeah.
updates here.
Yeah.
There we go.
Thank you.
Wait,
Wow.
Allison, I'm in 3
Congratulations,
weeks.
Allison. Yeah.
Thank you to you all as well.
Right.
Camille, did you
well,
say you're getting married in 3 weeks?
Yes.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I didn't even know that. Congrats
So.
to you too.
come on.
How are
Excited.
any of
Wow,
us keeping it
congrats.
together right
Exciting
now is what I
call.
want to know.
I don't know. Question that all the time. Well,
That's
that's fun. A
funny.
lot of fun, exciting summer plans. So,
That's right.
and new additions to the Hydra family. So very, very
Yeah. So
exciting.
in the chat, Samantha's going to the Dominican Republic for Memorial Day. Been there, loved it. It's been a while, so
Very
enjoy
excited
it.
for sure.
Yeah,
Never been,
that's
so
con-
first time.
it's going to be awesome.
I'm
And
excited. Yeah.
Brittany's going to Austin, Texas. Woo, woo, woo.
Oh, fun.
My old home in 2 weeks. Exciting stuff. All right. Well, Camille, I think we probably got enough right here. Want to go ahead and
Yeah, I
kick
think we
us
can go
off?
we can go ahead and get started with that. Okay, so I am Camille Ellsworth. I am the chair of Flow. It's a privilege. I am a development associate with R Plus Energies. We develop pump storage hydropower projects. Then we have Katie Rain, who is an absolute superstar and does a lot of environmental and permitting work. And then we have Norbert Woodhams, who is another superstar of ours. Quick shout out to those two. They were invited and asked to be keynote speakers during the hydropower collegiate
Yeah.
thank you competition finale. It was co-located with the NHA's Midwestern regional meeting. So I'm actually going to let Katie and Norbert talk about that experience. We're so proud of them and that opportunity that they had.
Yeah, absolutely. So at MHUG a couple weeks ago, so NHA MHUG in Des Moines, Iowa, Katie and I were fortunate to go meet with all the students. I think there were 9 universities in total that competed in the collegiate competition that was put on by the Department of Energy and the Waterpower Technologies office, and it was a great event. There was 3 parts to it: a poster, a presentation, and I think an oral, different than a presentation type Q&R or Q&A back and forth. And all these students were very engaged. We got to sit up there and hear stories and how people are excited to join the industry. And it was unique to hear from folks that were younger than us because they're still just graduating and we're the young ones in the industry. So it was a great experience. And I think Katie and I both have had, handful of students reach out to us and talk about how they want to get involved and look for jobs in the industry. And I think it was all good takeaways all across the board. So it was a great event and looking forward to more of those down the road. So.
Yeah, I agree. It was fantastic. And I think Norbert said everything I would have said better than I could have. So it was a privilege to be asked.
That's great. Thank you guys. And thank you for representing Flow there. And for anyone who's on the call and who's interested at speaking at an event or participating in a workshop and planning, definitely let us know. Part of our role with Flow is to create opportunities and platforms for you. And where we can find a match, we definitely will. And where there's an interest, we'll connect and communicate and get those opportunities set up for you. So reach out if that's something that you're interested in doing. Great. Okay, so for our monthly calls, quick update there. Our June call is going to be moved to June 13th. We are working with an incredible speaker right now. Once we have everything confirmed, we'll go ahead and relay all of the details that you need to join that call, who's speaking, what the topic is. So more details to come there. Keep your eye out. Rising Star Award. So very, very exciting. Again, this is the first time that we're doing this award. So there's a bit of a learning curve on our side, but it's another amazing opportunity to get your name out there and connect with the board of directors of the NHA, connect with leaders in the industry. So if you haven't already, check out what the application is, what submission requirements are. This award really is to celebrate the exemplary leadership and notable achievements of early career water power professionals, which all of you are amazing. You all really do fall under that. Applications are due June 1st, so that's coming up really quickly. But June 1st, again, take a look at it. It is a self-nomination. And note that it says 3 to 10 years of professional experience. This is not limited to water power industry experience. So just general professional experience. Keep that in mind. I know on the portal it does say industry experience, so professional experience, clarifying that. And then it's for the age that we're looking for is for under 35. If you feel like you're outside that range, definitely reach out to us. We'll still review the application. So I do want to clarify that. Okay. So Clean Currents, another exciting event that's coming up. That will be October 7th to 10th in Portland, Oregon. Early bird registration closes on July 19th, so check that out. As Flow members, we do have 50% off. So if you're within that Flow category, reach out for the discount. It actually is just Flow. But reach out, sign up. We're going to have a networking social on Tuesday, October 8th. So details coming on that, exactly where it's going to be, but there's a lot of great things in the works, so pretty exciting. Okay, and then giving you guys just a run of show how today's is going to work. We have a lot of really interesting content along the transmission and transmission planning lines for today. So a quick overview of what it's all going to look like. Michael Purdy will be giving an overview of the FERC transmission planning and cost allocation final ruling. And then we'll have Mark Kaiser from MISO giving an overview of MISO and transmission planning, kind of a one-on-one course there. We'll have a brief Q&A on that first topic. So any questions that you have, feel free to post them in the chat or hold on to them for that Q&A session. Anything that's posted in the chat, Norbert and I will run through and we'll relay those questions to the speakers. Following that brief Q&A, we'll have JD Polsnick from Portland General Electric talking on transmission from a utility perspective, growing demand and challenges, followed by another Q&A. This Q&A is going to be longer. You can ask questions specific to JD and what he's presented, or from the beginning of the conversation with Mark and Michael. So with that, we will turn it over to Michael Purdy. For those of you who don't know Michael, he is NHA's Director of Regulatory Affairs and Markets. Mike comes from Dominion Energy, where he advocated for Dominion Energy's interest at PJM, ISME England, and NEPL stakeholder venues. Prior to working for Dominion Energy, Mike worked at the Nuclear Energy Institute and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and he is currently supporting NHA staff member for Regulatory Affairs and Markets Committee. So with that, Michael.
Thanks, Camille. I really appreciate it. It's good to see everybody. I don't know how I transition from all those exciting life updates to this one, but I will certainly do my best. So earlier this week, FERC finalized FERC Order 1920. You may ask why they chose 1920. Well, that's when the Federal Power Commission was stood up all those years ago. So FERC tends to do this when they have big orders. They tend to tag it to a number that's important to them. So there's I guess the first thing I'd like to say is, like, what's the problem statement? What's the issue that FERC is trying to solve? And if you are, we represent the generation sector, but if your company serves load, has a transmission business, they are actively looking at this order to see how it impacts them. Mark with MISO, the Mid-Continental Independent System Operator. I know they are actively looking at this as well because they'll have to revise their tariff as well. So anyway, what is it? What does FERC Order 1920 do? What does it try to solve? So typically, as it relates to transmission investment, transmission planners, which if you work at a utility or if you operate in an RTO, the utility or the RTO, this is what they do as part of their job. They look at the transmission system and they say, okay, what sort of investments need to be made by the transmission owner, the utility, to better serve load, to more reliably serve load, or to reduce congestion or lower production costs, whatever the function is. The problem that's been found is that with increase of renewables that tend to be far from load, or increased load from data centers, the quote unquote siloed approach where we do local transmission upgrades, it's very one-off type investments, may not be sufficient as we are transitioning to a future with more and more renewables. This also comes on the heels of Order 2023, which was finalized last year, which revised the generator interconnection process. Again, similar types of forcing functions here, as these queues were overloaded with new projects. Really, in this order, that 1920 is a result of a 2-1 vote at the commission. So that's noticeable that one of the commissions dissented. That was Commissioner Christie, who's a former state regulator in my state in Virginia. And he was certainly upset with some of the decisions made in this order. Really, this order, I guess there's effectively a year to implement this order. It's more of a set of principles for transmission planners. It doesn't really direct transmission planners to make changes, but it's to direct transmission planners to make changes based on a set of principles. And it's a very brief 1,363-page order that lays out all of these principles. Generally speaking, it changes transmission planning from a 3 to 5 year timeline to a 20-year timeline that needs to be updated every 5 years. There's a benefits evaluation with 7 factors. I'm just quickly going through this here. There's a selection criteria for these projects. And then most importantly, frankly, is cost allocation. This is going to be the thorniest issue, is how do we pay for this and which consumers have to pay for this. So there's a lot in this. It's probably worth a multi-hour conversation, but in the interest of time and the 5 minutes I have, let me kick it over to Mark, who will talk about MISO's transmission planning process. Mark, I don't know if you're on already. There you are. And I will get off camera and let you take it from here.
Absolutely. Thank you. Just checking everybody can hear me.
We can.
Yeah.
Loud and
Okay.
clear, Mark. Perfect.
If you all don't mind, I will share. I have some materials. I have about 10 minutes, and I know I'll have to run through them fairly quickly, but this should give you a pretty good overview of system planning from MISO's perspective. I think the organizers asked me to tell you a little bit about my day in the life, as well as a little bit about MISO. So I'll start with MISO. We're Mid-Continent Independent System Operator. I live in Carmel, Indiana, on the map there. We also have offices in Eagan, Minnesota, and Little Rock, Arkansas. We're serving 15 states and the Canadian province of Manitoba, and we keep the lights on. That's how we describe what we're doing. We're like the air traffic controller for the power grid, making sure that there's just enough electrons to serve customers, and making sure that they're flowing on the power lines without overloading any of the power lines. Serving 42 million end-use consumers. You can see our capacity chart there, which is, as we all know, transitioning quite a bit over the last 10 to 15 years and continuing. When I got to MISO a little over 15 years ago, renewables would have been, you wouldn't have been able to see them on the chart. There was less than 500 megawatts of wind. Now we're at 20%. And the other big change there is coal, which probably went from something like 70% and down to the 30% you see here. So what I do, I'm actually in external affairs. I started in engineering, not hydro engineering, but I was a nuclear engineer by training. Came here to work on our markets as we developed our markets. But for the last 4 or 5 years, I've been in external affairs. I work with our member companies and our customers. So I manage relationships with customers in several of the states that are green here in our central region, as well as with our SEAMS partners like Southwest Power Pool, SPP, and PJM on the east, and our other neighbors. So I do a lot of talking to customers, understanding their problems, and helping resolve them, and then also communicating the kind of changes that we're trying to make, building support for those changes, understanding where our customers can't get aligned, and seeing how we can get aligned on those changes. So let me jump into a quick system planning 101, and Order 1920, I think is going to be really important. I have not digested the order. I'm not in system planning. I work closely with them, but I know we're working hard to digest that. I don't think I'm going saying too much by saying that we think that a lot of what we expect to see in 1920 is going to be aligned with what we have in place. Because as you'll see, my 2 or 3 slides from now, we start with principles. And we think those principles are aligned with the standards laid out by FERC. So we call it the MISO Transmission Expansion Plan. And you can see here that it's meeting local and regional reliability standards, both of them trying top down and bottom up, enabling competition among wholesale capacity and energy suppliers, enabling that competition by building the backbone, and allowing for competition among transmission developers. It's an 18-month process. Starts every June and ends the next December. So the latter half of the year, we'll actually have 2 different cycles going. Right now, we are working toward completing MTEP 24, we call it. So it's based on the calendar year, which our board of directors will approve, hopefully, in December. All right, so here's an overview. This is answering the question, what? So several different things are coming into play. And on the right, I'm not surprised this is the second time I'm already saying it, top down and bottom up, where we have local planning that starts with our local utilities that have the best idea and understanding of the transmission solutions that they need in order to support their grid, but then also regional planning, longer term, futures-based planning scenarios. And I think the previous speaker mentioned that Order 1920 is requiring transmission planning to go out 20 years. That's something we've been doing for at least 10 years, where we have at any given time 3 futures in play, 3 different expectations of what the future could look like that kind of serve as bookends, and we create transmission plans to meet those bookends. It incorporates a policy assessment. We have processes in place to poll our members and seek feedback from our members on their IRPs and on their expectations of what they plan on building. That creates that picture of what we expect to happen, certainly in the next 3 to 5 years and then out to 20 years. Interregional planning, collaborating with our neighbors. We are right in the middle of the country, and we have a lot of connections with a lot of neighbors. So if you Google JTIQ, Joint Targeted Interconnection Queue, this is a set of 5 larger scale transmission projects that are nearing completion between MISO and Southwest Power Pool. That's just the latest effort between MISO and one of its neighbors to plan together. We just also announced a study that we and PJM are going to conduct this year. And then finally, resource planning. It's a little bit off to the side, but not really. We have an interconnection queue. I don't have a lot of information here on our interconnection queue, but it's another very hot topic. That's the subject of Order 2023 that you mentioned. And interconnection planning, resource planning, building the transmission infrastructure that it takes to get resources able to interconnect and able to deliver their energy. That's a really important topic as well. All right, so that was the what, and here's the why and the how. Here's our guiding principles. And we say that you need 3 things in order to build transmission. You need to have aligned interests. So the different stakeholders, this is very large geographic spaces we're talking about. We're talking about people's private property that you need to build something on. You have to have aligned interests for getting this done, which is something that the transition is making possible. The transition is largely agreed on, that different states throughout the footprint are moving toward more renewables, which requires a different transmission backbone than what we've had in the past. Robust business case. You have to be able to defend that these are good decisions. And then lastly, cost allocation. It's the most important one. Our president likes to say, I'm paraphrasing, I hope I don't get it wrong. If you put the engineers in the room, they will come up with a good answer. The hard part is determining who to pay, who's going to pay and how much. So that's what we do spend a lot of time on that. MISO came to a good agreement with stakeholders more than 10 years ago now on some of on what we call multi-value projects, the projects that deliver benefits across the largest areas of the footprint. We've been able to use that successfully, as I'll show you in a couple slides. So then very briefly on a few of the details, policy alignment, market access. So we are creating a system plan that enables delivery of the most efficient resources, information exchange, both with our utilities, down and up, from the top down and the bottom up again, and back to our regulators. Different types of projects. So we have this process. It's a giant black box of calculating and running models, creating futures, running models, determining projects, coming to a conclusion. We have different kinds of projects, and really this comes back to cost allocation. These different projects have different ways, different folks responsible for paying for them. On the left is the widest benefit. So these are the costs of these are spread equally based on how much load, how much demand you have across the entire footprint, all the way over to the right, where you have a kind of project that's meeting a specific need for a local issue, and it's being paid for entirely within that zone. Notably, we have generator interconnection projects here, and the costs of building generators, the interconnection projects for generators, is typically a sticky point, both inside MISO and around the country and around the world, because transmission can be whereas it's only about 10% of the total cost of delivering energy. When you're talking about building a generator, based on where you're putting that generator, it can be a much larger portion of the cost of building that actual generator. So that really comes into play when you're trying to finance a project. So let me briefly summarize by what we've been working on. So we have an effort called LRTP. You can Google that, Long Range Transmission Planning. We've been talking to our stakeholders for about 5 years on delivering this. The projects we see here, these are all 345 kV, 345,000 volt transmission lines, 18 projects, total cost of about $10 billion that our stakeholders agreed to. These are multi-value projects. So these are the ones that deliver broad reliability benefits. And you can see that just at a high level, I'm not an electrical engineer, but what these are doing is taking the wind resources that MISO has. The wind is all in the Dakotas and Minnesota and Iowa and Wisconsin, and it's trying to unload that out to where the larger cities are, toward the Chicago area, St. Louis, into Michigan and Detroit. So this is a real success story for us, and we're turning around. So this was approved in mid-2023, and we're turning around and we're doing it again with our stakeholders. So on this map, the gray lines are now the tranche 1. We call it tranche 1, the ones we approved last year. So those are assumed that our stakeholders are working on them, our transmission owners and competitive developers. We should start seeing those come online. It takes 5 to 10 years, sometimes even longer. But now we're building again, and we're building both a 345 system in red, and also for the first time in quite a while, we're proposing 765 kV lines, so ultra high voltage lines, again connecting the eastern portion of the north and central of MISO to the western portion of the north and central regions. I know that was kind of a flurry, so I look forward to your questions and appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Awesome. Thank you very
Mark?
much, Mark. We appreciate all of that insight right there. I definitely learned a lot. Does anybody have any questions? We're going to try and ask a couple right now, and then we're going to do a larger Q&A at the end. And if you think of any other ones from Mark, we'll circle back. So if anybody has any questions, please camera on or throw your hand up and ask away.
Norbert, I actually have one. Oh, Anton, go first.
Go ahead. Anton, go ahead.
Hi, Mark. I was just curious why MISO's looking at getting into 765 as opposed to 345.
That was my question too.
Good question. So it's coming from the future of having a lot of wind and solar, where I'm from Michigan. I pick on Michigan a little bit. So there's going to be a lot of solar in Michigan, according to the current plans. You're going to have times when the cloud cover comes over Michigan, that solar goes away. Could be for 5 minutes, could be for 10 minutes. You're going to have to import energy into Michigan. And then there's going to be a lot of other times when Michigan has a lot of excess, when the sun is shining. Doesn't get quite as hot in Michigan as it does in the southern portions of the footprint. So you'll want to move the energy right back out. So we're talking, the reason for 765 is because we're talking about a lot more power flowing at any given time over more of the footprint over longer distances. So bigger pipes to carry more flow more often.
Awesome. Thank you.
Katie, was that your question as well?
Yeah,
Jessica.
that was my question. So
There we go.
two
That's
birds,
good.
one stone.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
You can.
Okay. So as you guys are proposing these new 765 kV lines, what type of regulating or regulations are you encountering versus a lower voltage? Is it more stringent, or are you having any resistance there?
It's a good question. We had a workshop. We've had several workshops. And our website is full of all this information. If you go back to a couple workshops ago, this has actually been a topic that we've been talking about a lot. And the why 765 versus 345 versus high voltage direct current. That's also on the table. That has been in some of our maps. We're holding off for now, but leaving it as a possibility for the future. One of the big questions is right of way. So 765 does require more right of way than a 345. However, talking about the amount of power that we think we're going to need to flow in 10 years and 20 years, it takes, I didn't have this slide in here, but there's a slide I'm thinking of where we compare it. 6 340 single 345 lines to have as much flow capability as one 765. So if you add up the right of way of 6 345s, the right of way of a 765 is maybe 140% of the right of way of a 345. So if you add up 6 345s, you're talking about a lot more right of way. So in the long run, that is definitely a factor. Trying to use pathways that already exist, like upgrading a 345 to a 765 or things like that. So you don't need a lot more right of way. It has definitely been part of the effort to be able to actually get these built.
Great, thank you.
Right. Thank you, Mark. I think we're going to move on to our next speaker now. And if anyone else has those questions, please hold on to them if you think of another one, and we'll have more time to circle back. Thanks,
Okay,
Mark.
Our next speaker is JD, who is the Senior Director of Transmission Delivery at Portland General Electric. He'll be touching on transmission from a utility perspective.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone see me, hear me, and see my slide?
We can. Thank you, JD, for joining. We're excited.
All right, perfect. Yeah, so I'm over the transmission delivery, so I'll dive into that in a second. A couple of things, as far as my background, I actually grew up in Wyoming, so it was great to hear about the Tetons and Yellowstone. And when you grow up in Wyoming, a lot of the times in the summer we head west, so we would go to the Oregon coast and go camping. When I got the opportunity, ended up moving to Portland over 20 years ago, got my electrical engineering degree in University of Wyoming, and then came west and had a great experience. Worked at Pacific Core, which is another utility here in this area, for 16 years and did every job from field engineering to asset management to managing project managers to getting into the transmission planning space and then the delivery space. All right, so about Portland General, wanted to just show this. So again, in the Pacific Northwest, we're one of a few utilities in the state of Oregon, but as you can see from the map, we're very condensed right around between Portland down to Salem, and we've got over a million customers when you think there's more customers than just each meter in there, and you know. Really started out with hydro as our backbone for providing power to the Portland area. What's amazing, some of our hydro facilities on the Clackamas River, first commercial operation was in 1895 and produced around 5 megawatts or so. Over the years, been able to upgrade that to around 17 megawatts. Total hydro capacity, we're close to about 700 megawatts right now in the system. The rest is a combo of gas, wind. We've got some coal in the state of Oregon. All the coal plants have been closed down, and so our last coal right now, we actually connect to Colstrip in Montana, and that's slated to close down in the next 3 to 5 years. So Oregon will actually be no coal, and then for natural gas, as we look forward, no new natural gas, no nuclear. And so what Mark was hitting on, really hits home to us is we've really got to look interregionally, expand where we're going to connect to generation and bring it back into our service territory. You can see in the state of Oregon, we've also got legislation really getting to 80% greenhouse gas reduction by 2030, and then 100% by 2040. And that's all going to require new renewables and also transmission to bring that in. So we've got the clean energy goals that the utility is going after, but we've also got amazing growth happening in our service territory. And so we've got the urban growth, the electrification. If you look at electric vehicles, in the state of Oregon, the highest amount of penetration capacity, that's right in our service territory. So a lot of the customers are buying those electric vehicles and using them to drive around the area. We've also got in Hillsboro our semiconductor industry. So Intel's one of the largest customers there, and then all of the supporting customers are around Intel that support that. And so if anyone's been seeing some of the news, Intel and just the chip manufacturing semiconductor growth is expanding in the United States, and Intel's looking to expand. This is where they do a lot of their R&D and some really neat innovative things here. So they're expanding. At the same time, we're turning into one of the top data center hubs in the United States. So over in Virginia is by far the biggest one, but folks are really eyeing our part of the service territory as well. We've got a couple international cables from Asia come over and terminate in the Hillsboro area, and the data centers really like that low latency connection there. And they're close to the semiconductors, and it's a real nice spot for them to connect. So, but with all of that, we're seeing tremendous load growth in our service territory, and we've got the clean energy targets to achieve. The final piece of our challenge here before we get into some of the solutions, and Mark hit upon this as well, we're seeing significant changes to the transmission system and how power is flowing. And so for probably 100 years, the Pacific Northwest, great hydro facilities from Canada down to the Columbia River, Oregon, and that power would always be used and end up going south towards California. California is around a a 52 gigawatt load in that area. And to counter that, Portland General, we're at about a 4.5 gigawatt load. So much smaller load pockets throughout the Pacific Northwest. Typically that power would flow south into California. Some significant changes have happened, the last few years. One, the climate changing the last couple of years, including this year, it's been pretty low rain levels, low water supply from Canada, state of Washington. And so it's not as much water there as you would normally see. California, on the flip side, they've actually had a couple pretty good hydro years that have helped get them out of drought. So less hydro to send north to south. The other thing that's been happening in California for years is the renewable additions and solar. And I think last I looked for an example of just the solar panels within the CAISO system, they're around 17 gigawatts of solar that's connected through their customers, flows into the grid. And so you can imagine, that's renewable power, very favorable plot price. If there's power constraints up in the Northwest, folks are going to want to buy that cheap power and move it north. And what we've seen, especially in the summer, is that's starting to overload parts of our transmission system that the last 100 years, we've never seen that power at that time of year. And so it's really forcing the planning and others to think, all right, what do we need to do to really, count on certain times of the year, power flowing north to south, at other times it bidirectionally changing and flowing south to north, depending on, where's the available resource and where's the load that it's going to. So you can see last year, Bonneville Power is one of our large federal agencies that has significant generation transmission. One of their substations was seeing this overload. And so part of the way you mitigate that real time is to establish flow gates and make sure, all right, we can go up to this many megawatts. Once we get there, we're going to have to curtail, we're going to have to move power around. And so what that does from a transmission planning perspective is we've got to put in additional projects to help alleviate those constraints, and back to the previous slide, help meet the requested load growth of our customers. And so we're really looking at it kind of a three-circle approach, very similar to what Mark said. So the last mile within our service territory, what do we have to reinforce, upgrade from a transmission perspective to serve that load? I'll talk about the permitting challenges in a second, but our strategy is wherever we've got an existing right-of-way or easements, can we upgrade that? Can we convert that from 230 kV to 500 kV? And as Mark mentioned, get that additional capacity within the same footprint to meet our customers' load. There's not only do you get more capacity with the higher voltage, but there's also newer technologies out there, advanced conductors, where the conductor can heat up a little more, maybe have less sag. Does that fit within your existing transmission structure? So you're doing a conductor upgrade versus having to change out the structures, because anytime you start getting into that right of way or expansion, that can significantly delay your project. That's our circle one. Circle two is you can start seeing we've got a lot of resources out in Central Oregon, Eastern Oregon. Can we upgrade those transmission lines? Can we get more capacity from Central Oregon, from Eastern, and bring it to our service territory? Central Oregon, Eastern, there's a tremendous opportunity for renewable energy, solar, batteries. There's a lot of wind in Eastern Oregon. And so how do you reinforce the transmission to move that power east to west? And then regionally, as you look at that interregional, what projects are out there, transmission projects that could we connect? Could we connect to something in MISO that, you start getting into advantages of different time zones, different peak loads that are happening, could that power flow to different areas of the West that helps both the Northwest, the Midwest, and really helps balance. So those are the three things we're working on. Biggest challenge that we have is permitting, and I'll highlight this is a line. This is 100 miles from Central Oregon to Salem in our service territory. This is a line we're looking to upgrade from 230 to kV to 500 kV, and within those 100 miles, you go through tribal land, you go through federal land, you go through state land, and then you end up in urban growth boundary, urban area within Salem. And each one of those different agencies, from your residential through your state through tribal, is going to require additional approvals, additional review, additional studies to be done. And so even as we try to stay within that existing right of way, we're very cognizant if you end up having to go out of that right of way for additional capacity, what does that do to the timing of your project? There's the largest transmission project in Oregon right now that's being planned is with Idaho Power, Bonneville Power. It's the Boardman to Hemingway project. So it's a 500 kV project coming from Boise and ended up here close to Hermanson. It's a couple hundred miles long. Those companies started permitting on that line in 2007, and we're in 2024, and it's still going through the final permitting parts of that project. And so as you think back to Mark saying our planning's getting to a 20-year view now, that's good, but if it's still taking 20 years to even permit some of those larger projects until you get into construction, that's a real concern that you'll identify it out, but unless you get some of the funding going right away, you're not going to be able to get that project actually in service when you need it. The final thing that we're really looking at, so FERC has been really working with the Department of Energy, and can we get some classification of what's truly an interregional transmission project, and can that help set up one agency, say it's at the federal, to be the lead for the permitting, so that you don't have to go through one process with your county, a different process with your state, and then a different process at the federal. It's at the end of the day, it's all the same information. Can you get that process worked out to where you've got one lead agency that everyone can intervene, work with, but hopefully cuts that process from 20 years down to 2 years, and gives the utility, gives the developers, gives the customers some certainty that, hey, we'll know in a couple of years if this project makes sense to move forward and get into that construction space. So I think I'll probably open it up for questions at this point. There's so many things we could talk about, and want to hear what folks are thinking or curious about.
Thanks, JD. Any questions? This is questions for JD or Mark or transmission
Mike.
in general.
Yep.
Could be anything.
Michael Purdy.
Yeah.
Hey, JD, how are you?
Good. How are you, Michael?
Good. Does your Mark provided an overview of MISO's tariff and what it already provides for. Do you guys foresee material changes to your OAT to incorporate the changes in 1920?
Yeah, absolutely. The other big thing too is the interconnection reform piece of this. And again, are people doing cluster studies where you kind of have a start-stop study process, or is it a continual things coming in, have to study, then your developers hear the price and leave, and then it's left to the next person? So I think, again, I look at Central Oregon. we've got developers that would love to build additional renewables there or other projects, and they can't get in the right study queue process that it gets to a transmission line getting upgraded at the end of the day.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
I have it's not really a question, but maybe just for an overarching summary, like an elevator pitch. We've talked a lot about what goes into planning for transmission, regional and state needs from a company perspective. So now you know this is the transmission line you're going to get built. Let's say you get through the permitting process. So now you're into construction. Can one or both of you talk really quickly about some of the challenges that go with actually constructing one of these things and then maintaining compliance once they're actually built?
Yeah, great question, Mark. I'll start first. One of the biggest challenges is your outages and your sequencing. And so we're to a point where these transmission lines are so important. And so finding the time to actually take them out of service so you can work near an existing line, or if you're reconductoring an existing line, you got to figure out when's the right time to do that. Do you have to bring it online at certain times so that you keep reliability steady as you build?
I don't have too much to add to that. That's the one that we see because we're in operations helping to support our members with reliability. But from a transmission planning perspective, we work with our stakeholders to design the transmission plans. But then once a project is approved, we hand it off to the utilities for permitting, siting, construction. So we're less involved there.
The other one too, Katie, I'd add in, especially, in the Northwest, your season, sometimes it rains for months. Are you at a spot where you can't even get in? You've got your environmental mitigation. Are there certain times where like it's not worth it to try building, staging? You've got to wait for a dry season.
Yeah, I think kind of the takeaway is just that this is such a complicated process, no matter where you're looking, planning, permitting, constructing, or even when these things are built, doing just general maintenance and those things. So thank you both so much. This was a great topic.
Right, I have a question. So with the increasing demand for data centers and how much electricity is being asked for, I know there's tons of load requests and an increase in load requests connected to that. But in what way do data centers and this additional required capacity influence the optimization of transmission line infrastructure, like the capacity upgrades, your voltage regulation, resilience?
Yeah, thanks, Camille. So it definitely benefits the regional build out of that as you're upgrading all of the lines to serve that. So that really helps as well. One of those keys there, work with our government affairs and business development partners as well, because you really have to map out for your community, where are these going, what upgrades are needed around that area to make this all work. And so that planning piece is really important at the start of a project. The other thing we're still trying to explore is with data centers, they almost always have a backup generation power source. And can you leverage that? If they're still getting power, could they give back to the grid? Could they flex their loads at some point? If it's a Google, a Microsoft, and they've got multiple data centers throughout the country, could they ramp down in one area, absorb that somewhere else? And so I think that's in the future. What can you do with the flexibility of those large loads that you might not get to do with a traditional commercial customer?
Oh, that's really interesting. I'd never heard about that aspect or thought about how they could be a flexible load and generating in a
Yep.
sense.
Right. Well, do we have any other questions? Yeah. Katie, you got another one?
Can I ask a fun one? This is just, I just like
Yes.
to ask speakers. So not related to transmission, but I'm curious, what, if you could name one thing, what is the like favorite aspect of your job? This will be a question for both speakers. Feel free, Mark or JD, you guys can pick who takes it off.
You want me to start off?
Go ahead.
Yeah, go Mark.
I'll say that I was alluding to it where the problems we're working with our stakeholders to solve are very complicated, not just on transmission, but on how valuable is the capacity that's getting built, for example. They're very difficult problems, and based on your business plan, your corporation's, your organization's goals, you're coming from different perspectives. So working with our members to try to build consensus coalitions so that we can create a set of rules that work well enough for everyone and also help us keep the lights on. Actually having those conversations, that's what I love.
Cool.
Yeah, and I can think of a couple. One, the variety of the work. I mean, the permitting space, like I never knew I'd know so much about ground squirrels and their habitat and when certain types of birds nest and, you know, all of that. But the other one is just the people within the industry that you work with. Everyone's super passionate, focused on what do we got to do to, you know, provide that reliable power now and going forward. So.
Thank you both.
And Michael, you were a speaker today. Do you have anything to add for your side of things? If most interesting or exciting?
No, I don't think so.
All of it. All of the above.
Yeah, I like that. All the
Yeah,
above.
great answer. Perfect. We love the community here. Hydro sticks with hydro. Perfect. So I think we have, thank you both of our speakers. Camille, I think we have some closing out announcements you're going to take. And well, I guess we have, yeah. Well, that's, I think, what we have left, right?
Yeah, just a big thank you to JD and Mark and Michael for joining us today, taking your time to give us a one-on-one and insight into how your organizations operate and approach transmission planning. We're going to briefly touch over the announcements again. Monthly call for June has been moved to June 13th, so remember that. We'll be sending out the updated invite. Rising Star Award applications are due June 1st. Take a look at it. Believe that Kelly posted in the chat the link to the applications. So even if you're not sure about it, take a look, read through it, and remember, you guys are doing a lot more than you think you are. And you do have a presence in the industry, and this award is also to help establish that presence and give you a voice and help others see the work that you're doing and the impact that you're making. And then Clean Currents, October 7th to 10th. Take a look at the registration on that. Talk to your advisors when it comes to the benefits of attending Clean Currents and if that's an opportunity for you. If they want more information about the influence of flow and the opportunities that you have as a young professional at Clean Currents, feel free to reach out to any of the flow leadership or the NHA, and we can definitely help you guys with that. And those are conversations that we ourselves have had before. So if you have any questions there, reach out and we're happy to answer them. But thank y'all for joining this. I think Kelly just posted something in the chat, so we'll read it out really fast. But Kelly said, and an extra plus plug about the Rising Star Award, the recipient will receive complimentary Clean Currents registration. That is correct. So if you are on the fence about doing Clean Currents, that's another reason why to apply for the award. Great. With that, we'll let you guys go. Thank you so much for joining the call, for all of your wonderful questions, and we'll see you next month.
Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. See ya. Thanks, everybody.